Hello code artists, welcome to lesson 6 of our introductory programming logic course where we talk about collections. Specifically we're going to talk about arrays. There are other types of collections like maps and sets, but for the introductory stuff we're just going to talk about arrays. So before we continue, there's a couple of things I need you to do prior to finishing this video. So when I get done telling you, please stop this video and go do those other things and then come back. The first thing I need you to do is in the comments of this video are two links that talk about arrays in a very abstract manner with visual pictures to help kind of explain it. One of them is completely abstract, and then the other one is for the C programming language, but he does enough agnostic generic stuff that I think it's beneficial to watch that one as well. So go watch that video and then come back here and read as usual down here at the bottom what the code requirements are for this particular project, and when you're done with all of that, come on back and we'll get started. So go ahead and stop the video and I'll be here when you get back. Okay, so welcome back, and after watching those videos and reading the requirements here, I have to tell you that the very first array that we're going to start out with the program requirement down here is what's called a multi-dimensional array. So it's more than just a straight line that has one value in each box like those folks taught you in those videos. So let me bring over a picture to kind of demonstrate what a two-dimensional or a multi-dimensional array in JavaScript looks like. So essentially it's an array of arrays. So here's your standard single-dimensional array right here, and there's your standard index positions. But what if we actually stuck an array inside of each of these boxes? And notice that they can be of different lengths. Like this one's 36 things long, and this one is 37, and this one's 5 elements long. So each of these would be inside of here, and then you access them with these double index positions. So 0 represents this array up here, so the first position, and then the second 0 represents which position in this array that you want. So 0, 0 gives you this one, and 0, 4 gives you the 5th position down. Essentially it kind of looks like this right here from other programming languages. So this box up here is 0, 0, this one is 0, 1, down here this is 1, 0. So the left number determines the row, and then the right number determines the column. So you can essentially think of a two-dimensional array is kind of like a spreadsheet, like an Excel spreadsheet where you have rows and columns, although in JavaScript they are arrays of arrays. So this array goes inside of this array position, and this array goes inside of this array position, and then they're indexed with these numbers right here. So feel free to stop the video and study this picture right here if you want to really get a good understanding of the visualization of how we do multi-dimensional arrays in JavaScript. So I'm going to move that out of the way, and we're going to get started with the actual coding stuff. Alright, so I've got the skeleton of our code already started right here, and as usual I'm going to go through and just kind of paste things in that we need. So as always with our other code, we're definitely going to need this particular variable right here, our standard continue response. And then the next thing I need is, since I'm going to ask them how many students are in each classroom, I need an integer variable or a numeric variable to store the number of students. And then the way that I coded this out, and you'll see when we're done, is I have a multi-dimensional array for students, and then I have a single dimensional array for reward students. Now arrays in JavaScript are kind of strange, so I'm going to show you what the best practice way that I have discovered after searching and just using this stuff over the years. This is how I recommend declaring and initializing your arrays. So I create an array by saying give it its name right here and equals to the open and closed square brace. That makes an array, an empty, undefined array. And I do the same thing here with reward students. Now, as it stands right now, both of these are single-dimensional arrays, and you'll see as I get into the mutator method for this array how we make it a multi-dimensional array. Alright, so let's start with, we need a mutator method for our first global variable there. So I'm going to bring in our standard mutator method. I'm going to copy it and paste it right down here below my call to main. And so what I have right here is I say if continue response is equal to 1 or if it's equal to 0. I go through and ask them, do you want to continue or not? And if they choose the wrong thing, I'm going to keep asking them until they select either a 0 or a 1. If it's undefined, so if it's not equal to that, I just automatically set it to 1 so that, as you remember, it runs the first time without asking them, do you want to continue? In the next video, when we talk about file I/O, I'm going to show you a slightly different way to do this, and you can choose which way you like best. Okay, so that pretty much takes care of our continue response. So now let's go down and create our mutator method for num students. Control C, come down here and paste it in. As you can see, it's almost exactly like this method up here. I am saying that the minimum number of students in a classroom is 1, and the maximum number of students in a classroom is 34. So I just go through and ask them, and until they type a number within the parameters of 1 to 34, it'll just keep asking them, or if they type in something that's not a number. So this is the way that we do in JavaScript. Oh, not the way, a way we can check to make sure that what they've typed in is actually a number and not something else. So I use this isNaN and then this parseInt functionality and then the numeric variable that I'm testing. And I remember I make it numeric by putting the word number in front of setting the variable's value. So it takes whatever they put in right here and sets it to number. So that's just a little trick right there, and I'm showing you that even though it's very JavaScripty, because a lot of languages have that functionality built in. So now you know how to do it. Okay, so as you can see, those two are pretty much the same. So now we're going to kind of get down to the meat and potatoes. We really only have 3 more methods to go. The first one is going to be the mutator right here for the students array. So let me paste that in here. Come down here. And this is going to be a big one, so don't freak out. But essentially, it's a big one because even though we want our methods to only do one thing, since an array kind of is one thing, it's a collection of variables all with the same name with different index positions, it would have been foolish in my opinion to write a separate method for each element that we want to fill in. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Copy it, paste it in here. Okay, that looks super big, but really all we're doing is this would be a separate mutator method, this would be a separate mutator method, this would be a separate mutator method. You get the idea. These are all separate mutator methods, but since we are doing a multi-dimensional array, I want to put an array of each student's information into an array box. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So the first thing I did is I said in my school it goes kindergarten through 8th grade, and I use a standard C-style for loop right here. And I do the let I equal 0 as long as I is less than num students, which we did up here. I then increment I by 1. And then here, line 66 is where I make it multidimensional. I say students array position I, which the first time it runs is 0. So student 0 should be initialized to have an array inside of it. This is how we make it multidimensional. That's the magic of how it works in JavaScript. Okay, so then I do a little console log out here, basically saying enter student 1's information is what that's saying. Student 1, so 0 plus 1 is 1. And I ask them to put information in. Now, here is something that you haven't seen yet. Here's I'm doing array position 0, 0, which we talked about in the picture. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if not array position 0, 0, meaning if it's empty, or if not, and then I do this regular expression search right here. This is saying if it contains anything other than lowercase, uppercase, space, or dashes, and it's greater than, or excuse me, it has to be between 1 and 30 characters long, and I use this dot test. So this is my regular expression test on what they type in right there. So if they tried to type in a number or a question mark or anything that's non-letter, space, and dash, it's just going to keep looping until they type some, or if it's longer than 30 characters or less than 1, it's just going to keep looping until they actually type in a valid last name. Once they do, then I move on to the next loop and I do the same thing, same exact thing for first name. And then I come down here and I do date. Now look at the regular expression for date right here. This is a special date regular expression format to make sure that I'm doing 2 for month, 2 for day, and 4 for year, and they're digits, and they have forward slashes between them. So that's all, and you can see I'm kind of prompting them to put that information in a certain way. And until they do that, it's just going to keep looping until they put the proper birth date in. I come down here for the grade that I want them to put in, and if I'm just doing a standard numeric test right here, if it's less than or greater than those two values, I just keep looping until they actually put the correct values in. And then finally, same thing down here, but look at this regular expression string. Since I'm looking for very specific characters, I'm either looking for lowercase m, lowercase f, capital F. Even though I tell them right here do lowercase m or f, I will accept lower and uppercase. But then I take what they type in and I run it through this special JavaScript method right here. So regardless of what they type in right there, I'm going to make it lowercase. And I'm showing you this special JavaScript method because a lot of other languages have this functionality as well. So I wanted you to see that there are little utility things that you can do here and there to make your job as a programmer easier. And so I keep looping through and asking for the next student, and I put the new student number right here. I keep looping through and putting the next students in until I am past the number of students that I said was in the classroom. So that's all there is to that one right there. Not too bad. The hairy parts are how to make it multidimensional and then how to access each individual array position and what that means. And the best way to do that is to rewind this video back to where I showed you the pictures of what multidimensional arrays look like in JavaScript and study those pictures or print them out. And I'll put a link to the actual pictures in the comments of the video so that you can print them out and have them next to your computer as a visual representation. Okay, next we have to have the Mutator method for our reward students, and this one was a little tricky, and it's not because of anything other than it needed some special algorithmic work, some logic to make it work properly, because the restrictions were I want to be able to randomly reward a student in the classroom, but I can't reward a student more than once until the entire class has been awarded at least once. So here's how I did that. I'm going to copy and paste this method over here. Okay. So I created a little Boolean variable called false, or excuse me, rewarded, and set it to false. Then I said, while not rewarded, meaning it's still false, the first thing I do is I set it to true. Then I set random student, notice this is a little local variable inside of this while loop. I set random student equal to this random number. And notice I didn't put the +1. And I did that because, remember, array indexing starts at 0. So I wanted it to go from 0 to the end of the array. So I create a random number. Now, I say if rewardStudents.length is greater than 0 and rewardStudents.length is less than students.length, I start to come through down here and I do this little for of loop, which I haven't showed you a for of loop yet because we haven't done arrays, and this is where it really shines. So the way the for of loop works is it's also called in other languages for each. So I'm saying for each student in the reward students array. So, but JavaScript calls it for each let, you have to declare the variable, each let student of the reward students array. Then I come down and do a test. If student equals random student, which is this one right here, I set rewarded to false and break. This means that student's already been awarded one time and they can't get awarded again. And that's what the break does right here, is it breaks me out of this for loop right here, and then I continue on. If rewarded, then I put the student, that's what push does right here. If I get through this and this never gets set to false and I don't break out, that means I must have rewarded. So I come down here because this is still true. I didn't set it to false here. It's a little tricky to follow. I come down here, if rewarded has been set to true or left as true right here, and I didn't reset it to false, if I found the student in the already awarded array called random student or reward students, then I push the random student into the reward students array. And these methods are on our cheat sheet to kind of talk about it. And then I break out of this loop right here. And I'm done going through the while loop. I don't need to keep going through it over and over and over, even though I've already done it right here. So that's just extra steps that the loop doesn't need to do, and that's what the break does. So this break breaks me out of this for loop. This break, if this happens, breaks me out of this while loop right here. So then if all of this was true and I went through and did this, that's fine. Otherwise, it must be the very first time this is running, so I just go ahead and set reward students to be an array right there, and I push in the first kid that gets created because this is the first time this is running. And then I console log the entire array out just so I can kind of see what's going on. I would not do this in the final code, but I like to see as it's happening to make sure that this algorithm was working. If I were you, I would stop the video and really study this right here, or after the video is over, look at the code up on our GitHub site, our repository for the class, and really study and understand what's going on with this algorithm right here. It's kind of key to understand, and that's in fact one of our 10 commandments is practice algorithms. Okay. And then one of the last things I do is just this tiny little utility function that I'll put down here, that in the main method I display the reward student, where it just simply says you got to reward and then whatever the student was. And the reason that I'm printing this out like this is because what the push method does to an array is it pushes it into the back side of the array or the right side of the array. So that's why I'm able to print out the last element in the array right there. And there are different ways to print out the last element, but I'm trying to show you less JavaScript and more just language agnostic stuff. So this is a very language agnostic way to say print out the last student in the array, is all that's saying. Okay, so the last thing that we have to do, since we have all of our mutators done, is we have to come up to our main method up here and flesh it out. So I'm going to copy and paste all the stuff that I have in here right to here, and notice everything starts to light up, everything turns yellow, and we're good to go. So First thing that happens right here, if continue response is not equal to 0 and continue response is not equal to 1, then I set continue response. And since the very first time it runs, none of this is true, I come down here and I set it to 1 and continue on. Alright. I set num students, so I come down and say how many students would you like to do, and then I populate those students, and then I say while continue response is equal to 1, and I push this down here just so that we're doing the reward students. So at least this happens one time to get the kids populated into the class. And then all that happens continuously is the rewarding of the kids, and then do you want to continue. So this allows the teacher to go through and reward every kid at least once, and then it starts all over again. Feel free to run this code on your computer so you can kind of see what happens and really understand what's going on with the arrays. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next lesson.